looking back, and I always quote Steve Jobs on this, is that you can't connect the dots looking forward. You connect them looking back. And that's completely my life. I had family and friends looking at me pivoting every 2 years my career. Like, what are you doing? And I said, I don't know, I'm just following my gut. I like it, so I'm going to do it. There's a truth to that. Your body and your mind and your heart knows where you're supposed to go. You're just supposed to trust it.
This is the Personal Finance Show.
Hi, I'm Bo Humphreys, and this is the Personal Finance Show. Darlene Patgunarajah never fit in with the status quo. Darlene is a pioneer. She started out as a registered nurse and is currently working at an agency for financial advisors. This is not a very common career path. Darlene's an excellent example of someone who built her own career path by creating new roles and systems that fit her skills and interests. Just because you started somewhere doesn't mean you have to end up there. Just because a role doesn't exist doesn't mean you can't make a case for its existence. It's okay to reinvent yourself and even take a pay cut rather than stay somewhere that you don't belong. It's only by trying different things and making changes that you're able to find your true calling. Darlene joined me in Toronto in Trinity Bellwoods Park to tell the story of her non-traditional career path and how she managed her personal finances along the way.
Job I got when I was about 14.
Okay.
My mom was a nurse, so naturally I hung around the hospital, and my first job was actually in the kitchen. It was all of $3.10, I think I started at.
Okay.
This was when I was 14.
$3.10 an hour.
An hour.
Yeah, okay, good.
So I remember kind of that experience of this whole idea of earning your money, and it was a crappy job. Like, I was, washing dishes, clearing off trays that came back from patients' rooms. So it wasn't extremely glamorous. And I remember a raise being up to $3.25, and that was a massive
nice.
It was a massive thing. So so that I remember. I don't really remember allowances per se. I remember just being able to ask if I needed anything, but I wasn't very demanding in that way. I didn't really need anything or want anything.
Yeah, so they took care of your basics
exactly.
if you needed it, but you were making this $3.25 eventually an hour to buy what?
Oh gosh, probably.
Or to save?
Yeah, I think I did do, at that age, around 13, 14 is when you start getting interested in clothing and, and fashion and all music. So more kind of that type of stuff. We're going out with friends. It's kind of like the age where you start to go to the movies by yourself and become a mall rat a little bit.
Yep.
So I think it was more for that type of thing. In terms of my family, and I didn't actually realize this until I was older, and you look back on it in retrospect, money wasn't really talked about.
Okay, yeah, so you, just maybe if you needed something.
Yeah, but it wasn't, I think I had a sense of, I had an idea of what my parents made. My mom was a nurse, like I said. My dad was a chemical engineer. We lived in a small town of Midland, Ontario.
Midland, nice.
Yeah, so first, I felt like first visible minorities that ever inhabited the entire town. So there were challenges around that being, visible minority. You're in a basically predominantly white town, French speaking.
Okay, yeah.
So that was an interesting kind of context and background to all of this as well.
Yeah.
And because, my mom as a nurse made pretty good money. My dad made good money compared to more of the blue-collar work that was available in a small town. Friends would see me and say, oh, you guys are pretty comfortable. You guys look like you're doing pretty well, especially when we upgraded from a really small side split to a 2-story house.
Okay, so,
yeah. Yeah.
So you're doing all right.
We're doing all right. And, school for me was paid for.
Okay, that's nice.
Yeah, so that...
So where'd you go?
I went to McMaster.
Yeah.
And how I ended up there wasn't exactly something I necessarily planned on, because so when I applied to university, I actually applied to 3 completely different programs because I had no idea what I wanted to do.
Okay, what were they?
So accounting at Waterloo.
Yeah.
Computer studies or computer science. I can't even remember what school it was.
Okay.
And McMaster was my third choice for nursing because my mom was a nurse and I kind of caved into the pressure. I was like, just do it. If you get in, it's great. I had a really great teacher that counseled me and said, look, if you do your nursing, it's a very portable career.
Okay.
You can go anywhere in the world. And
Is it really?
Yeah, it's a body's a body's a body.
Okay, well, yeah.
I can go to Australia and be a
What about
nurse.
regulations? Oh, Australia, but it's other countries.
Yeah, other than passing exams.
Sure.
And now they're making it a little bit easier for nurses to cross over. I think the NCLEX, which is the American version, and the Canadian, they're trying to kind of consolidate that so there aren't so many.
Interesting.
Yeah,
okay,
so nurses can move over.
It is portable.
It's portable. It's international. It's kind of like an international job, just like a doctor. Or
Yeah, that's great.
Yeah, it's not like accounting where you have completely different rules.
Yeah,
and
you do have. Yeah, it is kind of restricted by country, eh?
Yep.
So you had these really different options, like accounting versus nursing, for example.
Yeah.
I did accounting in university, and there's no way that I could do nursing. I wasn't there. But you had both of these parts of you.
Yes, and I knew going into nursing that I wasn't planning on staying in the clinical field. There was a lot of options. So this, going back to the teacher that counseled me, he said to me, look, you do your nursing, you get your degree, first and foremost. This was before degrees were mandatory.
Yeah, okay.
And he said, that degree will basically open up everything else you want. You want to do accounting, you do business with your nursing. You do administration, you do hospital admin.
Of course.
There's if you want to do tech, go to the tech side. Although that wasn't really talked about back then because this was back in '93, and the internet was barely alive.
So maybe
then.
the computer studies or whatever it was called wouldn't have been the best one at that time.
No, it was.
Early days.
It wasn't the thing it is today in terms of an
sure.
option. You could kind of. It didn't look as. The opportunities were not as open.
Yeah, right now it's like
it's
golden. Like
exactly.
take programming in your
well,
app development or whatever.
Yeah, like my son, take a STEM class.
Perfect.
Right? Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
So basically, I ended up at McMaster because I basically got early acceptance.
Okay.
I got guaranteed residence.
Nice.
And what my teacher had told me kind of sunk in. And I was interested in healthcare. I actually thought, well, if I'm going to go through healthcare, I might start off with an undergrad in nursing or science, and then have the option to maybe pursue being a doctor.
Okay.
So that was kind of something in the back of my head. If I like this, if I like dealing with people, kind of, face to face, this might be something that I could have as an opportunity once I'm completed. So.
That's probably a good one to choose because you're right. Like you could apply the accounting to healthcare and stuff. You can't really do the other way around.
That's right.
So if you're interested in one, do the one where you can then add things to after be in administration or whatever you might want to do with it, or like run a hospital or run a clinic, which is what you would be qualified to do, especially.
Yep.
Yeah. Business is like an add-on.
Yeah.
Kind of like I chose it as my main thing, but it's everywhere.
Yeah, exactly. It's like how tech is now. It's like you add tech to whatever industry, and you can basically maneuver your way through. So,
tech is now everything. Yeah, we were talking about that when I was talking with Brian Daly, right? Recruiting, and I was thinking recruiting for tech positions, and he's like, tech positions are everywhere.
Yeah.
This is everything, right?
Yeah.
So you ended up then. So you're an RN.
Yeah. So I'm a registered nurse. I'm actually now, because I haven't been in the active practicing class, I'm actually in a class called non-practicing.
Okay.
So I still basically pay for the right to say I'm an RN, but I'm not actually. If I ever wanted to go back, I'd have to go through a series of. I don't know what I'd have to do. I'd probably have to prove so many hours and extra learning and make sure that I'm back on my game.
But it'd be easier than starting over.
Starting over, exactly.
But I know the feeling. If if you have a designation or you don't, if you're working towards a designation, you take a break. Everything changes a little bit.
Yes,
right?
exactly. Yeah. And I mean, it's that whole guilt that I could have easily said, you know what, I'm not nursing anymore. I'm not really interested in going back there. Let me just cut it off. But there's that feeling of I earned it. I worked 4 years for it. Yeah. I want to hold on to it. And it's that sentimentality or that feeling of I don't want to let go of it. So I still hold it. And it's served me well, I think.
Yeah, so you started working as a nurse.
Yes.
So
Yep.
you, like, right away?
So the fourth year of nursing is a really critical year because in a lot of ways it basically shapes, in most cases, the career path you're going to take, what specialty you're going to take.
Okay.
So at the time, the most coveted placements in fourth year were emergency and labor and delivery.
Oh, okay.
And I got both.
Oh, nice.
I got both, which was amazing. But something inside of me said, I don't know if this is the route I want to take.
Yeah, like
'Cause
either one.
Either one.
Yeah.
And people thought I was completely nuts because I gave up both placements.
Oh, wow.
Like, that's a really hard thing. Because sometimes I look back and said, if I had just done that, where would I be today? I could be somewhere else. But
Sure.
But I
Like,
basically...
so before you even started?
But when I got the assignments, I went to the head of whatever, I think it was the dean, or I asked for specific permission for another placement and one that I wanted to pursue, which was in health promotion.
Okay.
And in nursing, it wasn't a thing. It's not health promotion is not a specialty. It's more of a philosophy. It's more of a
like as you're doing other things,
exactly.
You're promoting.
Yeah.
Like is this preventative health?
Preventative
like that kind
health.
of stuff?
Yep. So I found myself a placement with the Heart and Stroke Foundation at the Hamilton chapter.
Okay.
And I basically created my own role and had to basically justify why a nursing skill was needed here.
Interesting. So like you're pioneering this as a role.
Exactly. And I tend to find it, and as we kind of go through my story, we're going to find that that's where I tend to end up.
You're in pioneering.
In pioneering, creating.
Because you have these ideas of what you want to do, and it doesn't fit with the status quo.
Exactly.
Which I totally respect.
Totally. And
it's important to have, like, how else is something change?
Exactly.
If there isn't somebody thinking, you know what, I don't really fit into any of these cookie cutter roles that you have. Even something like nursing, which everybody kind of accepts as, yep, this is people's bodies are like this. Yep. You're going to be this kind of nurse. You're going to be that kind of nurse.
Right. No, and there's a very vanilla view of nursing.
Interesting.
So unless you're actually in the field or in the industry, you don't know like the breadth of what you can actually do as a registered nurse. So that's what I did. I got this role, and I worked. I feel like I worked really hard to try and mold it into something that other students could follow in. So it's like I wanted to establish something that, yes, this is nursing skill, this is nursing knowledge, this is why we need this type of professional in this particular role. So in the Heart and Stroke Foundation at that time, they were actually in their first year of putting together this health promotion committee provincially. Yeah. I got on that committee, funny enough, and I was part of the stroke prevention program thing. It was so far back, I don't remember, but I remember going to a provincial meeting, like a 22-year-old sitting at the table with these other people talking about how we're going to build this health promotion committee and make it part of the the Heart and Strokes mandate. It's not just, yes, we're raising funds, yes, we want to do research to help and treat, but now we need this really important arm of
preventing.
Exactly.
And they weren't really focused so much on that.
No, not back then. So this was again it's 97. Yeah.
So you got to be in the ground floor of
ground floor of that. And then I left, and then after that my rotation ended and I kind of moved on, and then actually a nice segue into my next term was actually advanced cardiac care, which I really enjoyed. First off, my dad had heart problems. It runs in our family. Okay. So I had a really keen interest in, if I'm going to specialize in anything, I want it to be in cardiac.
Okay.
And also it
close
took
to home.
Exactly, and it required a lot more thinking. Like, I'm more in my head than I am. Like, I'm a terrible hands-on nurse. Like, you would never want me to draw your blood.
Yeah, okay.
You don't want me to put a catheter in you. You don't want me to do any of that stuff. I can walk you through it. I can teach you. I'm very good at that. And I can strategize. But to actually, physically do it, that's totally my mom. My mom was, an excellent bedside nurse.
We all have our strengths.
Exactly. Yeah. And I'm more than happy to admit that. So I went to cardiac nursing. I loved it because, again, it was an analysis, like looking at heart rhythms and determining what the problem is based on seeing what I'm seeing. I went and did a course in advanced cardiac life support, so the paddles and all of that. I'm very critical when I watch Grey's Anatomy.
Yeah,
actually, they're actually pretty good. They're probably one of the better ones, but I've seen just little misses.
Does this become your specialty?
No, so moving on. So after I graduated, and while I was in my fourth year, I actually took a job as a first aid instructor.
I was wondering, are you getting paid at all yet?
Yes.
These
Yeah.
are just placements. You're not
So
getting
these are
paid
placements,
yet,
non-payment.
but now you take a job in first aid?
Yep. So I actually, one of my classmates I noticed was teaching around campus first aid, because in a lot of courses, especially in health science, you need some sort of first aid if you're going to be going to a clinical scenario, right? So
Yeah.
I said, hey, how did you get this job? She goes, oh, talk to this guy. He has a company out of Mississauga, and basically he hires university students to do first aid training. It was a great little business model he had. He trained university students. They got paid like $10 an hour.
Okay.
There were bookings. You basically take the booking, and you were basically touring university campuses to try and do that. And I eventually moved into advanced camp first aid and CPR, and I got to tour Ontario and do all the camps, like the counselors.
Nice.
So it was a lot of fun.
Oh, that's really cool.
Yeah, it was really cool.
So wait, that's a different job, or?
That's what it evolved into.
Okay.
As I left university and realized, so I did get a clinical job at Western Hospital, on Bathurst.
Okay.
And I hated it.
Oh, here.
Yes, in
Yeah.
Toronto. It was my first job, and I said, okay, well, I should get into clinical. I figured even if I wanted to take a path down the road that wasn't clinical, I needed a clinical foundation.
Okay.
Because
So
that's
you
a
have to do
credibility.
something.
Yeah, you need
Yeah.
a credible base.
Sure.
If you want to teach, you want to do admin, you have to understand the ground floor of
Yeah,
how
yeah.
to do something.
Absolutely.
So I did that, and I hated it. Every time the phone rang to pick up extra shifts, I would ignore it. So in my head, in my heart,
you
I
could
was
really
like,
feel it, that
I
this
felt like
is-
this is not the
I mean,
right
you kind of
move.
knew from the beginning,
Yeah.
almost, but
I thought I could suck it up
Yeah.
and do it, and I said, you know what? So there was a critical event that just made me say, you know what? This is not for me. I got to go. I think it was New Year's Eve. First off, it was already terrible that I had to work on you have to work holidays, and because you're bottom of the rung when you get hired, you basically have to take all the shifts that nobody else wants.
Okay.
So I'm working like midnight on New Year's Eve. I don't even remember
Oh,
if this
wow.
was New Year's Eve, but
yeah, that's the thing about being a nurse or working in a hospital is
shift work.
Somebody's got to do it.
Somebody's got to do it. You have to be there.
Can't
for
just
the
we're
patient.
closed.
No.
We're closed tonight.
No.
Sorry, come back later.
It's not like financial advice. It's a long
Exactly.
weekend. My computer's off. My phone is off.
I always tell
so yeah.
people personal finance is not urgent.
No,
right?
exactly.
So I'll probably take 3 days to get back.
Exactly, yeah. And then you can tell people that, and they're like okay with it.
Yeah,
Not when somebody needs
up
a
front.
med.
It's a very different industry. So you're not loving this.
I'm not loving it, and so I remember one night I had a patient, really old woman, really elderly woman, frail. Again, this was kind of a hybrid floor. It was cardiac patients who were urgent, and then they come to our floor once they've stabilized a little
Okay.
bit. The other half of the floor was whatever was left over in the hospital that no one could take. Like it could be gastrointestinal, it could be whatever else. So there was a skill set that you needed to be a bit of a jack of all trades, but you also needed to know enough about cardiac to kind of take care of this other cohort of patients. So this old lady, I remember, you do your rounds, you do your vital checks, and she was really not responsive. I was trying to wake her up, not responding, and I'm fresh, I'm new, I'm like, let me check her pulse. Okay, I don't feel anything. Yeah,
Uh-oh.
respirations. No, I don't feel. I don't want to call a code. So I'm like, okay,
Oh, yeah.
I got to call a code. This is
Oh,
someone's
man.
life. So I called the code, and crash team comes. The lead physician is there, and I'm outside of the room, just kind of waiting to see what happens. And she comes out, and she tears a new one off of me.
Okay.
She's like, she did not arrest.
I'm not dead.
She had a heart. She had a heart, although very weak.
Okay.
Maybe it wasn't my experience to be able to feel for really thready, almost non-existent pulse. But in fairness, I was nervous. And
So it was there.
it was there, and she was okay. She was there, and they still needed to treat her to kind of, help her out. But it was not a true code; it was a false code.
Okay, so you kind of wasted people's time. Is that what they
Yeah,
call it?
yeah, it was a
Okay.
waste of time, and just basically
were
the worst.
upset.
Yeah, they were upset. It was like the worst thing that you could
But
ever
better
happen.
than not. Like, what
Better
if it was
to err on
true,
that side
right?
than on the other
Oh,
side.
I think
right?
she's fine, and
Yeah.
then she's dead.
So for
Right.
the rest of the shift, I was so nervous, and I kept checking on her, and she still really wasn't responsive. I'm like, okay.
Yeah.
I went back again like a few hours later. I'm like, she really, I was shaking her. I'm like, Mrs. Whoever, please wake up. I don't want to have to call another code.
Oh, man.
And it did turn out, there was a shift change at that point, and I found out the next day that she did die that night.
Oh, wow. Okay.
So I wasn't too far off.
yeah.
She was on her way.
But there's
she was
nothing they could have done.
Right, she was
Okay.
declining. But the saddest thing, I got a call from the family the next day, and the only question they asked was, was she alone when she passed away. And that broke my heart because
she would have been
overnight.
Yeah, right?
It was overnight, and it's just by chance if you happen to be there when you're doing rounds.
Well, yeah, you're not going to be there all the time.
And I said, I don't know if I can do this.
So you're just realizing this whole thing isn't for you.
Yeah, this is not for me. This doesn't make me feel good. And this is not where my strengths lie. And also, as a side note, I had really bad eczema on my hands, and hand washing is like
all the time.
Every room you leave, and I was like dying.
Okay.
I'm like, you don't want like somebody with like rashes on their hands.
So there's emotional, intellectual things, and also physical barriers. There seems to be a lot of things pointing you away from this.
Right.
If we could pause for a second
Sure.
and talk about so you didn't have to pay for school.
No, what happened though was I did get OSAP to help my brother.
Okay, so now you're working the $10 an hour thing, and then you get a little more money touring the campsites.
Yeah.
Maybe a little.
Yeah.
But now this clinical job, was that well paying?
Yeah, it was decent. You get a pension for starting off. It was.
So you were able to pay off your OSAP?
My school was fully paid for, but I was starting to pay off the money that I borrowed from my brother because, in fairness, my parents were able to pay for me, so they said, help your brother out. So I said, okay, no problem. I'll get OSAP. So, $8,000, and I was trying to pay towards that, no problem. But now I had basically put in my resignation at this point. Okay,
so are you still having a little bit of debt then? Or are you debt-free now?
I think it was a little bit, like I was living in a rental, like a really shitty rental in like the bowels of Mississauga, like no elevator.
And working at Western Hospital.
Yeah, so I was commuting, and I think at this point I was getting like my first car. I really wanted this car because it was stick. Like I wanted to learn how to drive stick really badly.
Yeah, I never did.
It's the best thing because now
I want the car to drive me.
I love when people say, "Oh, I need somebody to move my car, but it's stick." I'm like, "Yeah, I got it, no problem." And people make that assumption that nobody knows how to drive. stick anymore.
And a lot of people don't.
Yeah, so it's awesome. So
it is kind of an awesome privilege.
Yes,
a friend of mine can do it.
Yeah, it's like cool factors.
Yeah.
So debt. It was like I wasn't saving yet because I wasn't at the point where I had like a lot of extra to save. I was just trying to get by. I was still paying off some debt, and
so you're not in a bad place.
Not in a bad place,
but not necessarily in any place to start saving or investing, or thinking about your future or anything like that. You're kind of, this is in the now. You're about what, 25, something like that.
20. Yeah, so it's still early 23, 24ish. Yeah, 24.
And so you resigned.
I resigned, and my first thought was, oh my God, I just wasted 4 years. I just wasted a lot of money and a lot of time for something that I don't even want to be in. And then I I kind of had to regroup myself, said, okay, maybe I need to get away. So I got a job offer in Arizona.
Oh, wow, okay.
In cardiac.
And so the portability.
Yes, and I got a job. They basically interviewed me. So at the time, there were a lot of cuts in nursing here in Ontario.
Okay.
And the majority, I would say almost 80%, maybe 80's high, and I'm making a presumption, but it seems like a lot of my friends that I went to school with went to the States. So I have a girlfriend that's still there in California. She has a family there now. I have another one that went to Boston. So there was a ton of opportunity in the U.S.
Okay.
I got the job interview. I got the offer with like bonuses, and we'll move you here. And I said, okay, this is great. And I reflected on that.
Yeah.
And I'm like, okay, Dar, is this really what you like? You're just kind of jumping out of the fire into like another frying pan.
You already decided you didn't want to do nursing or whatever.
Exactly. So I turned it down.
Okay.
I didn't go to the States. Yeah. So what I did in the meantime to kind of find what I needed to do, I temped. I was the most overqualified temp.
We're talking about reception work.
Reception work, like packing mail and opening and like answering phones.
So you're starting from scratch.
I started from scratch.
Wow.
I was really humbling, but at the time I knew, let me just use this time to think.
Okay.
And see, I got a ton of job offers. Would you be our receptionist full time? I'm like, no, I think I'm good.
Yeah, I know, right?
This is just a pit stop.
You're the best one we've ever had.
Pretty much. Yeah. It's like, wow, you're so organized. Your critical thinking is like on point. It's
and you just keep taking everybody's temperature and pulse and stuff just instinctively.
Exactly.
The guy almost had a heart attack.
But I was really good. So funny enough, I had a lot of fun organizing like like if they had a computer system,
Yeah.
I had a lot of fun organizing files and finding ways to make things more efficient.
So you do have an administrative side.
I have
to
an
you,
admin side.
which you weren't really. You were able to do in your nursing, right? I
yeah.
mean, you have to
document.
There's paperwork.
There's a lot.
Lots of paperwork.
And back then it was all handwritten documentation.
Okay, yeah.
So in addition to the hellish shift, you're staying an extra hour and a half to 2 hours to catch up on all your documentation.
Sounds like being a teacher.
Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah.
And it's not overtime, it's just part. And when you're
Why is it? Like all of these public service jobs, like we're helping people, like, you know, a lot of people get to do their job and then leave at the end of the day.
No,
and
not with nursing.
You're having to do more, and teachers have to do prep and
Yep.
like all of this stuff is just like the thankless jobs
exactly.
too, right?
And
Nobody's
and
like, "Thank you,
there's an
nurse."
emotional toll too. Like you don't
yeah.
always get to leave behind the emotions and the thinking, and you know you leave just like that old lady. Like I left her not knowing what was going to happen to her.
Yes, it's something you can't really
Yeah.
avoid, right? You
Right.
can't, and you can't take it home with you.
Exactly.
That's tough.
That's tough.
Burn
And
out even quicker.
Right.
Yeah.
Emotional. And it takes a really special person to do that job. Like it really does take a specific personality.
Yes.
So I temped, and I eventually fell back into healthcare, healthcare, with a company called Assure Health Management. And what they
Okay.
were was an adjudication organization for group benefits, which was really interesting.
Okay, so what does that mean?
So basically, they brought me on in a role called research nurse, and because of my health promotion background with the Heart and Stroke Foundation,
there you go. Everything is for a reason.
And during this temp time, I actually also acquired a certificate in wellness, health promotion, as well as occupational
So
health.
you're still growing.
I'm still growing. I'm still going to school
in the healthcare field.
In the healthcare field, but really, I really thought my road would lead down wellness, health promotion, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
I took tons of courses in nutrition and fitness and all of that stuff.
These are the things that interested you.
That interested me. Exactly. More about self-preservation and let's take care of the person before they get sick and try to save the healthcare system on this side of it, right?
Yeah, that's great.
Yeah, so I was doing that. So when I finally got this position, I was so excited. It was an amazing position. It was a desk job, but the amazing thing about it is now I felt like I was doing something I was really interested in. So what they had asked me to do is create 10 health promotion programs that would be sold to like a Great West Life as part of their benefits package.
Yeah, of course.
So smoking cessation,
added value.
So when you're an employee and you have a benefit package with your employer and it's with Great West Life, part of your package would be this health promotion program, for example. And if you're a smoker, you'd go through this 10-week program or whatever, or a calling and support program, whatever that looked like. This is what they wanted me to build out.
Okay.
About 10 of them. Smoking was one, and there was another one on just like treatment, best practices for treating H. pylori, which was like ulcers, type of ulcer. So it's like a treatment specification.
Maybe something that people who work at desks will get?
Yeah. So it was really addressing
9-to-5 corporate jobs.
Exactly, like people who are there tend to have a higher incidence of these types of symptoms.
Okay.
So how can we address it? And part of the, I guess, quote unquote, fun for me, my nerdy side got really into this, was the data mining and data analysis. So now we were getting reports on how employees were using their drug claims.
Oh,
and now you can start to find patterns. It's like, okay, all of the the codeine, and then you start to look at, okay, even though they went to 5 different doctors, you could see that their benefits code follows a pattern of codeine and opiates and whatever the case is.
Okay, so what, you're finding an addict?
Yeah, you're finding patterns,
yeah.
and it wasn't up for me, but you could recognize them, and then you start to develop, okay, in this industry or in this cohort, this is probably the type of program that we might want to implement. So that's basically what I was there for. I was there for about a year and a half, 2 years.
Okay.
And
developing these programs.
Yeah, and on the side, because it wasn't something I could do full time necessarily, it did take up 100% of my day. I also was assigned to different companies as an occupational health nurse. So go in, basically help people through workers' comp, try to get them back to work.
So kind of nursing light.
Nice, nursing light. Nursing
you
light.
You could still do your nursing, but not as intense
exactly.
as it was before.
And this felt a little better because now I wasn't actually having to deal with like really strong clinical stuff. It was like, okay, you've been hurt, you've been off. How do we help you get back into it? How do we assist you and support you? And you're always kind of like the bad guy because you have to represent the employer, which basically just wanted you to get people back and not
Of course.
losing more money.
Yeah, is there a conflict there? Like you're trying to be a nurse and you
Yeah.
get your, well, I guess you have a Hippocratic oath of
Yes.
some kind. And yeah, but then you have these capitalist demands.
And that's the art of occupational health nursing, is to be able to
Interesting.
balance both sides.
Wow,
so
yeah, it's
so I was
challenging.
there, got some really interesting, and then my teaching with CPR and all of that kind of came into play, because now I can also teach employees. So it all kind of, worked out. But again, still not making me jump out of bed.
Yeah. And are you making any money?
I am. I've got to fear.
You're
Like
doing
back
decent
then,
money now?
I think it was like $40,000 back in 2000.
Okay, so 40
Yes.
grand, maybe your costs aren't as much.
Yeah.
And
I was still in an apartment, so there was no mortgage yet.
yeah, but it goes back to your parents didn't talk about money.
Right.
So what was your philosophy on money at this point? Like, I'm spending it, I'm just earning it to pay my bills.
Yeah.
I'll save what I can.
Yeah, so a boyfriend that I had at the time was really keen on going to these seminars on RSPs. And
Okay, yeah.
Like I had a life insurance agent approach me.
Sure.
And
I know you're
mentally,
working for Great West Life. So.
yeah, but it's funny. Mentally, I was not ready to talk about that stuff.
Okay.
I was
You weren't there
still
yet.
so focused on, let me figure out my career, because I can't deal with money stuff until I know what I'm actually doing and how to plan for that. So if I have a trajectory of like the next 10 years, this is the career I'm going to be in, and these are the steps I need to get there, these are the money moves I'm going to make.
Yeah.
In parallel, I can't think about the money moves until I've got that career in place.
And just
I-
moving ahead and thinking back,
Yeah.
was that the right thing for you?
No.
No, okay.
Anyone who is in finances or had got any sort of financial education about compound interest and time,
Yeah.
you will wish that at 14, when I was making $3.25,
You put that away.
that I had at least put a buck away.
Yeah, some of it, right?
Yeah.
We always think that it's never enough
Yes.
to make a difference.
Exactly.
But early on, it is.
Yes. Yes.
It's just the weirdest thing to be able
I
to
know.
explain to someone, and you can't prove it legitimately
No.
with them. You can prove
No.
it with other generic examples.
Exactly. Or
So
you-
who's going to tell us this stuff?
And I'm trying to impose that on my kids. Like, I'm trying to get that kind of thinking. Like, let's learn about compound interest. You're only 4 and 7, but it's really important. So
Yeah, if you get it started early, I still don't think that we can make people. You can plant as many seeds as possible,
Yep.
but I still haven't figured out a way.
Yeah.
I don't think there is.
No.
To make people do something they don't want to do.
That's
You-
right.
If they're not, even if they could be looking at all the evidence, and they're just not ready.
Right. It's like life lessons. You could watch 10 people go through the exact same issue,
Yeah.
but until you do it yourself,
The
it
parallels
doesn't.
to health are crazy, aren't
Yes,
they?
yes,
It's
and-
like you've probably seen, well, especially in cardiac,
Yeah.
so many people. Is it preventable? Are a lot of heart conditions preventable?
Absolutely. I mean, there's definitely a genetic component that you have to work your way
Sure.
around, which means you have to be a lot more diligent on the preventative stuff.
Yes.
Knowing, obviously, it's the stuff that you hear all the time. It's not rocket science. It's your diet. It's your exercise. I think movement is the
Basic
most
stuff, right?
underrated. Like people,
Walk around the park.
Exactly. You can't run away from your fork. So I love that saying, because it doesn't, people think, oh, if I just work out, I can eat whatever I want. It's
Yeah.
like, no, you actually have to think of it the other way. So,
Interesting.
yeah, so it's
Can't run away from your fork.
Yeah.
So you can't just focus on the activity part of it.
That's right, and think that
then
you can
eat
get away.
cheeseburgers
That's
every
right.
day.
Yeah.
Because I run so that I can eat donuts.
Yep.
I don't know if that's the best thing. Not that I eat them for every meal, but it's like a reward for me at the end.
Exactly.
And not all the time.
But there's the psychology of food, right? It's people
Yeah.
are treating it as a reward.
yeah,
when
why is
it's
food a reward? It's not nutrients.
because they do it as a child. It's like give them a lollipop when even the dentist does it. Here's a piece of candy for taking good care of your
Not my
teeth.
dad. My dad would never give it. Did you get a lolly from your dentist? My mom ran the dental office. She would never give it.
No, now they give out
Sugar-free gum.
Yeah.
At the very most.
Yeah, maybe it was in the dentist. I think it was vaccinations. That's what it was.
Oh, that's it. Yeah. So doctors will do it. Food is a reward. It's a thing. Like, why don't we go for a run as a reward?
I know,
You know?
I know.
What is I guess play. Play is a reward for
Right.
kids. So that's activity. So that's
Yep.
nice. At least that has that framing. But
Yep.
when we're older, what kind of you get to go maybe play a game.
Yep.
Play hockey.
That's right.
Or you get to go out and play. Maybe that's a good reward.
Yeah, yeah.
It's like, but we need to. Maybe that's one of the ways to do this, right? Reframing everything.
Exactly.
And not having food as a reward, just like, having it as you need to have this to be healthy.
Exactly.
But you can't tell somebody
if you do this and this and this,
Right.
you'll be able to prevent this heart attack you're going to have when
Exactly.
you're 55.
Exactly. Yeah.
I wish.
You wish.
If
you
we
wish.
could only see, then people would be able to correct. But so the finances, heart conditions, it's like, what do? You can just you do your preventative stuff.
Yep.
So that's why you're focused on all this promotion.
Exactly.
Because it's all we can do.
It's what we have in our control.
Yes.
And it's an investment. I was looking at it from not only a personal and physical investment, but also an investment into our general economics of the healthcare system.
Okay.
Like if we could, and this kind of leads into my next job.
Sure. Yeah, there you go.
Job number, where are we at? 3 of 10.
Lost count.
We're going to be here a while. So at this job where I was at doing this health promotion stuff, I had a colleague come up to me with a newspaper clipping. She's like, Darlene, you got to check this out.
Okay.
So it was a newspaper clipping looking for registered nurses to get into telehealth.
Yes.
So
Was telehealth not a thing?
Telehealth Ontario.
Oh,
I was the
it's
first.
just starting.
It's
What?
just starting.
You were the first one?
I was one of the first nurses they hired.
Wow.
We went through a rigorous 2 to 3 week boot camp, and so basically this program was already implemented in New Brunswick.
Okay.
And the nurse,
it was first.
Yeah,
eh?
and
Okay,
it was.
that's interesting.
So she had established it there. The stats were excellent in that they were
Sure.
actually making a difference in waiting rooms. And just to kind of backtrack what telehealth was, is that it was a call-in center for patients across the province to access a registered nurse to do a triage and an assessment on the phone to determine one of 4 what are called dispositions. 1, you need an ambulance right away.
Yeah,
I'm
okay.
connecting you right now and it's
Yep.
on its way. Second, you need to go to an emergency room within the next 4 hours.
Okay.
Make your way there. I will fax your notes and get there. Third, you're okay. You still need to get this looked at, but it's not urgent. Go to a doctor
Yeah.
within 72
Make
hours.
your,
And then
appointment. Yeah.
fourth is you're perfectly fine. Just take care of it yourself.
Yeah.
Here's some steps. Here's some symptom relief.
You don't have cancer.
Yeah, but call us back if these things
Even
happen.
though the internet told you.
That's
So
right.
This was around the time where the internet was telling us
Yes.
things.
And people were like hypochondriacs. And,
Yes, okay.
But actually, our most common caller was really new parents.
Yeah.
Fevers.
Of course.
It was. I actually had that protocol memorized. It was like fever, diarrhea, vomiting. All of that was like ingrained.
So
I could
common.
tell you exactly what the treatment protocol was. So basically, what it was is now you've got these nurses who have never, in a lot of cases, taken keyboarding, not very
course.
tech savvy.
Ah,
And you're now bringing them in to a call center with a headset, a computer. You take away their sense of sight. You take in terms of being able to see the client.
Well, that's the whole thing about
Yep,
being a nurse.
exactly.
It's,
To
it's
touch,
in person, it's
to
connection.
see,
Yeah.
to get a vibe. Now you've added an additional skill set of you better know how to type fast. You better get through the protocol quickly,
That's tough.
run through it, listen, pick up the nonverbal cues. So it was a whole new specialty.
Yeah.
And I loved it.
So this is
This
for
is
you.
me.
This is you.
This is
You've
me.
been waiting for this.
I've been
to
waiting
happen.
for this. It was the marriage of technology and
Wow.
healthcare, and I started off as a nurse on the phone. I did hundreds, probably thousands of calls over a period of how many years I was there, and then I basically moved into being a supervisor, manager, and then an educator, which is where I wanted to be. I wanted to be at that point in time where this new nursing specialty was coming to life, and I wanted to be at that point where I was making a difference in this specialty.
Who would you educate? Where would you go?
So nurses would be applying. So a lot of nurses that came in to apply were kind of heading towards their retirement. Maybe they had some physical ailments that didn't allow them to do
Sure.
bedside nursing, but they have a ton of knowledge.
So much nursing experience
yeah.
that they maybe can't use.
Yeah. And their intuition has clicked in.
So much.
So they can listen
They
and
can
say, I
hear
know
it.
exactly
Yeah.
what this is.
Oh, what a great skill to develop.
Yeah,
too.
exactly. But, okay, so the opposite challenge of that are these are nurses that are typically older.
Of course.
So now there's a little bit more, so you get 2 cohorts. The younger nurses that are, I can do this fast, I can get through protocol, but they didn't have the nursing experience and knowledge built up yet over the years. And then you have the other cohort where you have very experienced nurses. You could get them on the phone, they could talk, they could figure it out, but they couldn't catch up on the documentation.
Okay.
And the protocol and everything. So that was a really interesting group to train.
And they had to do it all on themselves. Like you couldn't have like a younger person listening and doing all the typing.
You could. So
Did that happen
Yeah.
sometimes?
So part of the
Okay.
training, like before I would let somebody off
Sure.
and on their own, I had to sit with them
Okay.
and make sure that the key questions were being asked. Like first of all, very base, make sure that this is not an emergency.
Yeah.
Let's get through that first skill set. Like, you know that this is not an ambulance requirement, and that you could get through that first part. And then once I felt comfortable people can get through that, okay, now let's start to refine where we're going with this particular client. And there was, and according to provincial standards, there was a time limit.
Okay.
10 minutes and less
Sure.
was ideal. And you had nurses that could do it in an average of around 7 to 8 minutes was a good average.
Okay.
To be able to get on the phone, listen to a problem, figure out what you need to do, and then get them off and then get the next person. This was also in the heart of SARS.
Oh, wow.
So we had like literally 24-hour callback times.
Just give people a little
Just
breakdown on SARS.
So
People who
SARS
never
was
heard
that
of it.
respiratory, I guess, what would you call that? That was like an epidemic that kind of spread
Yeah.
across the hospitals in the GTA and I guess Ontario, where it was extremely contagious. Healthcare professionals were sick, patients were dying, and it was something that they really needed to get a handle on, and there was public panic about this. It's like, okay,
Do I have SARS?
Do I have SARS?
Everyone
I'm
just
coughing.
thinks they have SARS.
Or I have to take my child to the hospital. I really don't want to because what if I get SARS?
Oh, that. Okay.
Right?
So telehealth.
Telehealth Ontario. And not only were we doing assessments, but we were also an information referral system.
Okay,
We were redirecting patients to pharmacies, and we were really starting to integrate into the healthcare system where we were now faxing, super technologically advanced faxing to hospitals. That note I just created is going to end up in the emergency room at Toronto Western.
Okay, yeah.
So that was super cool. And also to be able to start to integrate with the family health networks
And
that were
people are
starting to
taking
come
you
out.
seriously.
Exactly.
Everybody's sort of understanding the value of this.
Exactly.
So at this point, it seems very unlikely that you're going to end up in the personal finance space.
Exactly. So how
So
now what?
Are we getting close?
Okay,
to the
so
transition?
let
or
me
no?
let me speed through like maybe the next 3 or 4 years. So
Oh
I
wow,
was.
there's a lot more. I know
Oh,
there's
yeah.
a long story.
I know, like I'm looking at the time. I'm sure we're good. I know, yeah. But this is kind of, I think, really so I had said that I tend to be in areas where there's pioneering.
Yeah.
This is what excites me. I
First
want to
telehealth.
have
That's
telehealth
exciting.
was fun.
And now you're the educator. And
I'm the
you're
educator.
now.
Yep.
So you're at this point of educating, and where do you go from there?
So I realized very quickly. Now my personality is that I always need to be learning.
Mm-hmm.
If I've always said if I could be a professional student and just like audit courses on university campuses across
do that.
Canada, I would just do that. I just love taking in knowledge. And
It's your next job.
It's I actually thought I ended up being a professor. I actually really thought I would end up in academia, and it didn't happen. And two of my best friends in high school actually ended up being professors on opposite sides of the country.
It's
So
never too late.
I know. It still could happen. After I was there for 4 years, I realized there's not much more movement for me here unless I get into more of the executive management stuff, which I wasn't really interested in.
That's right.
So I took a part-time job with a company called HeadCan. And what they did patient education materials for pharmaceutical companies. So when you go into a doctor's office and you see those plastic molds of hearts and bones, or you see like the neat flip thing about teaching you about your heart medication or whatever that is, or the GI.
They needed somebody educated
That's
to
right.
make that.
Right.
Yeah.
So I was at a company that created all of the prototypes and the patient education material. So they brought me on as called a research nurse for some reason, to basically create patient education materials for pharma companies. So non-branded and branded. So pure patient education. This is your body. This is how it works. This is why you need to take this drug. Versus branded. Here's the drug that you need to take. It's called Plavix. It's going to help your blood. So there were two sides to this.
Yeah.
So that was really interesting because now I've got to be really creative. I got to think of models. How do I create this heart model to show exactly the function so that I can show how the drug interacts with it?
And did you know that this was something you would like?
No.
You never had the experience doing
No,
this?
I've never had any experience going into anything. But
That's it, right?
But I know I have a creative side.
You're open to these opportunities.
Yes.
It's definitely a theme in a lot of really interesting careers.
Yes.
Is you're just open.
Yep.
You don't feel like you're stuck.
Looking back, and I always quote Steve Jobs on this, is that you can't connect the dots looking forward. You connect them looking back.
Mm-hmm.
This was his speech, that convocation speech
Sure,
for Stanford.
the famous
And
one.
that's completely my life, is that I had family and friends looking at me pivoting every 2 years my career. Like, what are you doing? And I said, I don't know, I'm just following my gut. I like it, so I'm going to do it.
That's great.
And I always feel, and I'm only realizing that there's a truth to that. Your body and your mind and your heart knows where you're supposed to go. You're just supposed to trust it. Because it connects somehow. I think it all connects.
Yeah, it does. And I mean, you're building up all these skills,
Yep.
and they all work in one way or another,
Yep.
right? They're all working together.
I'm starting to stitch together a bunch of really different skill sets. And then in that particular job, they asked me to become an account manager. So moving away more from the patient ed and the creative side to now managing clients.
Clients being
Pharma companies.
Yeah.
So putting together the scope, what is it they're looking for? Here's the clinical study that just came out to prove that our drug works. Help us build the marketing behind it and the story and the patient education behind it.
They're contracting that work out to you.
us, yeah.
Yeah, so because you're specializing in making all these
Exactly.
great
So not only was
branding
it just
things.
creating tactical pieces, it was what's the brand story behind it.
Okay.
And because I had a healthcare background, I
Yeah.
could speak that language. I could read clinical
And
studies.
did that work for you? Like you're talking about
Yeah.
brands?
So now I've opened up this whole skill set in marketing and branding.
Yeah,
And
so-
so I stayed here for like a year, and then I got one of my colleagues in this company moved on to another company called CPC Healthcare, which was a healthcare communications company, pretty much like almost like a competitor. But it brought me into a role that was a lot more heavy in strategy. It was like a senior account manager position, and I was now having clients like Pfizer, Janssen, and
Yeah, the big ones.
The big ones. I was traveling across, GTA.
So this sounds like it might be some big money for you.
It was. It was funny because I think this is where I started to go up. I was closing in on like a 6-digit,
Yeah.
right? And it was also the year that I got married.
Okay.
I got a condo.
So you bought a condo?
I bought a condo with my husband. We had no kids, so I was really free to kind of pursue this career.
You had saved up a down payment for this condo?
Yeah, so I had, so back in 2000, when I had gotten my job with telehealth, I had bought a condo at that time.
Oh, nice.
So I got out of that
so
dingy.
you had saved up money
Yes.
throughout then? Okay.
Exactly. I had, and you know what? Condos back then,
Yeah.
oh my God, I think my condo was 120,000 in Mississauga, Eglinton, Ontario.
And what, like 5%?
I think it was like $1,000.
Okay, so it was very accessible.
It was so accessible.
Okay, so it wasn't like you had to save up tons of money to do it.
It was easy. I'm like, oh my God, homeownership is so
but
easy.
You took this opportunity. You're crazy. Anybody would say
I know.
So easy. Wow.
That was 2002, 2003 when I bought my first legit home.
Getting in early, right?
Exactly.
So that was your investment.
That was my investment.
Yeah.
That allowed me to flip that and buy the next condo with my husband.
Great.
So we lived in Richmond Hill.
And are you still very basic in your understanding of
Yes.
financial products?
I am actually in that transition phase when I was at CPC Healthcare. My money story kind of aligns here,
Okay.
and my financial career kind of aligns here. I had a high school student reach out to me after years. Oh my God, years and years. And he's like, Dar, I've been looking for you. I'm like, okay. And he goes, let's connect, let's chat. And I said, yeah, I think I really need to talk about finances. He's like, okay, because he was in the financial services industry. And I know you're very candid about your background of like the addiction and stuff like that.
Yes.
I just had a ton of money stolen from me from a woman that befriended me.
Oh no.
In the condo I had just bought. She was like a Filipino woman, and I actually don't tell this story very often. I think you're probably like maybe the third person I've told, but I think it's an important piece because she befriended me. I was going through like a really horrible time with a relationship, really negative relationship I was trying to figure out how to get out of, and she just she came in with this spiritual angle.
Yeah.
You need to.
You were desperate for.
Yeah, I was
help.
looking
You
for.
were looking for something.
I was looking for a friend. I was
Sure,
looking for somebody I could confide in, and she was totally all that for me. Gained my trust, and long story short, she had like a business venture that seemed legit, but
So you invested.
so I invested in that. Gave her way more than I probably should have,
Yeah.
and I don't even want to say the number because
Sure.
it makes me kind of sick to think about it.
Totally fine.
And then I found myself in this financial hole.
Oh wow.
That I'm like, okay, I have a condo. I should be here at this point in my career where I should have, accumulated a certain amount of money.
Yeah.
And now I had to basically go to my parents and ask for help.
Wow.
And that took.
You went into debt, like you took some money out
Oh
to
yeah.
give to her.
Oh
Okay.
yeah. I took money out.
Wow.
I gave her money, and then I had to like pay cards and credit and all of this stuff that I had to just service. I just had to service this debt.
Oh, that's unfortunate.
And
I'm
there
sorry
was
about that.
yeah, and there was no return, and she disappeared to
course.
California. And I got a call one day I had somebody, the husband that she married also was in the same boat. He reached out to me and said, hey, there's a case being built for her in California. They actually just arrested her. But after I talked to the people down there, they said, yes, we've got her. She has a pattern of this, but unfortunately, nothing. You can't do anything. You're out of jurisdiction. And even if she gets anything, there's a ton of people
Everybody
ahead of you.
else is ahead
exactly.
of you. Oh.
So I just, you know what,
Wow.
I couldn't dwell on it. I said,
She was
okay.
like a serial con artist.
Oh yeah, that's a perfect word. She was a con artist. She plays on people. She connects with them. She was Filipino, so it was like, there was like that cultural connection,
Yeah,
right?
the connection.
My parents were not living in Mississauga at the time. They were still in Midland. So yeah, it was a really, really difficult time.
Okay, so yeah, how did you
So,
make it out of this?
my dad just kind of took the reins and said, okay, we're going to the bank. You have equity in this place. So I basically did a remortgage.
Yeah.
I had equity in it, so that was fine. And then I just basically, I just paid everything off.
Okay.
I worked to pay it off.
So you're
Yep.
working hard to
I'm working hard.
just move on.
Yep, to move on. And at the time I met my husband, and he was super supportive and helped me out of that situation as well. And yeah, so that was like a huge lesson for me. And I had a girlfriend at my work that was telling me, Dar, you're being an idiot. I don't know, but
It's about risk. You're learning
like
about risk?
Definitely about risk, and it's like what we said, until you go through it, the lesson doesn't kick in until you go through it. And now I'm very...
Why do we have to go through these things?
I don't know. I'm a very trusting person in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
And when it comes to money, I think people choose to be more optimistic than not. So when something, even though seems too good to be true, people will still want to believe that. It's like that's the lottery winner mentality.
Yeah. Why is that? Yeah, because they haven't had experience to the contrary.
Right.
That's
and this
the
was
main
really,
thing, isn't it?
Really after, like I left home at 19 to go to university, but university is still kind of a bubble. This was really my first time really being on my own. I had my own place.
Yeah.
I had a job, and now I was learning to be an adult. How do you become an adult, and how do I plan for all these things?
And again, if your parents say, maybe your parents went through something like this. Oh yeah, we gave money to a friend once, and if they would have discussed that with you, maybe if they did go through it, they would have felt embarrassed, so they wouldn't have talked to you.
Yes.
Or maybe they didn't
That's
go
right.
through it.
Yep.
But you would have at least had a story to say,
Let me
maybe
think
I
about
should be a
this.
little more suspicious.
Exactly.
Like anything. So the more we talk about it,
Right.
You talking about this right now will help somebody listening.
I hope so.
Right? That's why we talk about it, right?
Yes.
So if you're wondering, like, oh man, this is hard to talk about, what's the value? That's the value.
Yeah,
And
for
I've had people react specifically to the things I've said, and their life has changed a little bit.
Right.
So it does work.
Yes.
So just
And everything,
hold on to that.
Everything works out in the end.
We go through these things to help ourselves, but also
exactly.
others.
You go through it. Like, you really do just have to go through it. You have to go through the pain. You have to go through the lesson. You have to go through the learning.
Yes.
So when my friend appeared from high school, it was kind of like, oh, the timing's perfect. I need a financial education.
Sure.
I need to get my stuff in line. We were engaged. We were just getting married, my husband and I, and we knew we had to set things up. We had to get life insurance.
Yep.
We had to start saving. If we're going to look down the road for a house, what are the things we need to do to set that all up?
Yep.
So he did our life insurance, and he kind of went through and he's like, hey, Dar, what do you think of this? This looks cool, right? It's like, you can look at it. I just filled out like 5 pieces of paper. I'm getting paid like next week on it. He was very candid, right? And I'm like, oh yeah, this is good. He goes, hey, you know what? You could do this. You could do this. I'm like, okay. So next thing you knew, I passed my LLQP and my mutual fund license.
See, I can see why you like the Brian Daly podcast.
Yes.
Because he walked up to the Planned Canada
Yes.
people and like, you could do this.
You could do that.
You were the same. You're the same.
We're the same. That's why I felt really compelled to reach out to him.
definitely. You should definitely
I'm
connect
like,
with Brian.
okay, no problem. And
That's awesome.
Yeah, so I did that.
So you got all your licenses.
Yes.
And yeah. Then
So I did. So I tried to I moonlighted that for it was really more in my learning about finances, and it wasn't even complicated finances.
Did
It
you
was
get your
basics.
CFP?
I did not.
No, yeah.
No.
That's not
It was
necessary.
actually my next move, and then again I had to rethink. My personalities, I like to collect licenses and certificates and skills. Like I did, in that time period, I also did my master's in education.
Wow.
So I have an education
How?
When I was, when was that?
What, at night?
2006. They had Mississauga campuses for Brock University.
Okay.
So they had a master's degree that I did while I was at the pharma thing.
Yeah.
When I was doing the pharma thing, because I realized I love teaching.
You
I
love
education.
learning.
I love learning.
So you're always going to be learning.
Yes.
That's an interesting thing, right?
So. And it actually helped grow my brain cells because it was a lot of philosophy and a lot of abstract thinking that kind of helped me to just grow that brain in a different way, not so tactical.
I like that way of looking at education that's not immediately practical.
Right.
It expands, or even doing nothing or being creative.
Exactly.
Those are the things too, right? Like they think, I'm wasting my time not doing something that's generating income.
Exactly.
But it's not true.
No, it's always been about me for learning, and I may not have had an end goal for it other than I love this and I just want to learn more. I know I'll use it or somehow it'll apply indirectly.
Yeah, it will. Yeah, it'll help you take that next move.
Exactly.
So you're just moonlighting as what like selling insurance and mutual funds?
Yeah, mutual funds. Yeah, so I was moonlighting. I was doing it on the side, and I just took a few years doing that. Like I wasn't super involved. I did it for mostly friends and family.
I forget what you're doing for work now.
I was
like in the day. Are you doing something else in the day?
I was doing the healthcare communications.
Yes,
marketing account manager.
Yes, marketing account manager, Pfizer,
right,
things like
all
that.
That stuff.
But now, like at night or with friends and family,
I'm doing the financial stuff. And my friend is whispering in my ear, "Do this full time. You can make the jump. Come on, let's do it." And to go back to our comparison with health and finances. It's the same system. It's the same approach.
You're still helping people.
You're assessing. You're planning. You're implementing, then you're evaluating.
That's why it was so easy for you to transition, or not transition, but to do them at the same time.
Yes, the approach is the same.
It's the same thing.
It's the same thing. The health of your finances is my parallels when I talk to people with finances, I always bring it back to health because that's the language I know. And I'll use it, say, hey, we're applying for life insurance here. You had a heart attack 3 years ago. This is super important to get some coverage.
Yeah.
What we're doing here is exactly what we would do if you were in the hospital bed. We're checking you out. I can't give you a product. I can't give you a drug until I know what's going on. So don't ask me just for a life insurance policy or an investment. Just put in your body. Take it. You'll be fine.
You would never do that with a drug.
You would never do that. I could never sit down
with a therapy or with advice of any kind.
It's irresponsible.
It is irresponsible.
So for me, a huge part of this financial thing was let me assess where you're at so that I can provide you with the best solution.
Yes.
Not be an order taker where someone says, I need life insurance. Can you just give me $1 million, 20-year term? Just get that done right now. And I'm like, but I don't know what else is going on. I don't know anything about you. I don't know if that's a responsible move.
This isn't McDonald's.
That's right. That's right. So the parallels were very clear. And so that job at CPC, I was let go.
Okay.
And that again was another
trimming,
the fat I was too expensive, I guess. And
you got a lot of skills.
And I think deep down maybe I manifested that because it wasn't making me jump out in the morning.
That's it, right? Doesn't that happen? It's you start doing, maybe you're not as invested in the work anymore,
right.
Or you're not. It just comes out in other ways.
That's right.
If you don't realize it, it will come out.
Exactly. And I think part of the problem was because my roots in healthcare is always about patient first. And when you start to introduce, here's a clinical study, help us create the branding around it so we could sell more of this drug. And I'm like, this doesn't fit. This doesn't sit right.
I was wondering, what about your values?
Yes.
Is that where it was
It was
hitting?
difficult. It was difficult because I wanted to come in from a patient education standpoint and patient advocate standpoint.
So you're helping.
Yep. So when I'm reading a clinical study and they're saying, but you see this number, the statistic, we can highlight it and blow it up on the patient education piece and make sure that it's highlighted so it looks statistically significant.
But, I know. It's a little shady, right?
It felt wrong. And my last account, one of the last accounts I left was for an ADHD drug.
Okay.
And,
which I have, by the way.
Yeah, and something about it just, I feel like there's other options before just like medicating right away. I definitely think there's a place for it in certain times, but
I think you should explore
other options, because there's other ways to deal with it, for sure.
There's a lot of I went through lots of behavioral therapy before we figured out that this is what I needed, right?
And my son, we've been exploring whether or not he has that. So
it's probably a tougher one for kids too.
Yes.
Like I was 28 when I figured it out.
When you figured it out,
which was, oh my God, what a life before that.
Oh wow,
it's pain, life of pain.
Oh,
right?
I know. But now you're in a better place.
Yeah, but I wish, in a way I wish, but in a way maybe, I don't know, maybe it wouldn't have helped. Maybe it was just for when I was older. I don't know.
Right.
But you're right. There's a lot of things to be done. Shouldn't just jump on medication right away, but that's, of course, what the pharmaceutical companies want. Yeah. So you're in a bit of a conflict.
Right. And I was okay being let go, because I'm like, all right, we're fine with the condo. My husband can support us. It wasn't like a massive mortgage. So I had time to think again, and an opportunity came up, and we're getting close to how I've gotten here, is that a role basically became available at the Ontario Association of Community Care Access Centres, or it's called OACCAC. It's now called HSSO because they've turned it around.
Okay.
But basically what it was is it's a publicly funded organization to help with home care. So people who require coordination of services in the home, let's say after they've been discharged from the hospital, I need a nurse, some equipment to get there, and an OT or a PT to come in 3 times a week. So basically OACCAC was the head office to manage all the little offices across Ontario.
Okay.
So best practices was coming out of here, funding was coming out of here. But what they found was that there was about a dozen legacy systems, tech legacy systems being utilized across the province that didn't talk to each other.
Nobody's communicating.
So someone from Niagara is coming to Toronto. I have no visibility into what happened to them there, and now they need services in Toronto. So basically, with the inability to find a common vendor that could basically tie all this in together, they said, you know what? We're gonna create a technology part of our organization, and we're gonna build our own.
So from scratch. From scratch.
Okay. So they brought in a CTO who looked at the first scope of it. This was before I came on, but basically he looked at it, and what was a 3-year plan for deployment of this system, he cut it in half. He was very much of the lean startup mentality. He goes, no, we can do this with 18 months. I need to just hire the right people, and we're going to build this. And it was staged. So basically, I came in at the point when version 1 was ready to be released, and I was part of the deployment team because I had experience teaching healthcare professionals on technology.
Do the list.
I had an education background with my master's degree. That helped. So all of these things were coming into play. And
you're a nurse.
I'm a nurse. I can talk their language. I understand change management. Because
people might respect it a little more too. There's always that, right?
About 50% of this job was like change management, like telling nurses again, you got to stop doing what you were doing, and we got to implement this new system.
And who better to tell them than someone who's been through what they've been through?
That's right.
And who understands the value, first of all, of having the communication, and then you can communicate that through to them.
That's right.
So you deployed this whole thing.
Yeah. So I and a team of educators basically traveled across the province for about a year. So I've seen every small town in Ontario. It was a great experience. I was still, my husband and I were still kind of newlyweds, and we didn't have children, so I was able to go and travel. Had tons of fun, discovering restaurants in little towns, mom and pop.
How far north did you go?
Oh, Thunder Bay.
Okay, so
I flew.
Timmins?
Timmins. I miss Timmins.
Okay.
I miss Timmins.
Someone else did that?
Someone else did Timmins.
Oh,
really? Yeah, when I came on, they had did Sudbury.
Yeah, I was born there.
Yeah, that's funny. I know all these places. I actually have a vivid memory of every place.
Flying to Thunder Bay is a good idea.
Yeah, I know. Getting out is terrible.
A 17-hour drive.
Oh my gosh. It was but it was beautiful to see Ontario. And I was on the education team. We were deploying this, tons of fun. I was with like 3 or 4 other nurses. Happened to be nurses. You didn't need to be a nurse. There was a migration team, there was a deployment team, there was an education team, and then an entire tech team behind us that was at the head office, basically doing bug fixes, new feature releases, all of that stuff. And because we were front-facing with the users, we were able to really collect the workflow and how does that feed back into how we built this thing.
And I'm guessing you're not doing any financial stuff at this time.
Yeah.
Well, you have clients.
I have clients, so I'm still
you're
servicing clients.
Yeah. Maybe not
heavy.
Crazy getting new clients.
Exactly.
Because you're traveling around.
Exactly.
But of course, that's always there. That's what I say about if you're an advisor of any kind. It's a kind of a relationship that you got to
pick up the phone, and then I had options to prospect or not prospect. I could just maintain the relationships I had, or if I wanted to kind of build up again, need some funds for whatever, let me pick up my prospecting again.
Are you working for a specific company?
Yes, so at the
time,
I will. It was an MLM company that started off my financial education and then eventually moved into a brokerage.
Yeah. Okay.
So this
you got to do all this stuff.
This 18-month contract turned into 8 years.
8 years.
So I got to know that system really well. Really well.
Okay.
I was actually, my area of specialty was integrations. So we got to the point where we were now starting to talk with the healthcare system. So emergency room, back and forth, providers, vendors, equipment and supplies. We were doing this back-end module with financials and HR and privacy. So this was a really big beast.
Yeah.
A big beast of a system that works beautifully. And then the Ministry of Health actually looked at it and said, you guys have built something that maybe we were trying to get eHealth to do. Didn't quite work out.
Okay.
This could be a gold standard on how we build
great.
a database for the common health record. Potentially, right?
Which is not in existence anymore.
Not
yet, I mean.
There's been lots of initiatives. I'm not as close in touch.
I always ask my wife, why don't we have digital health records? And she says, long story.
Yeah. It's getting the hardest part is getting people on the same page. And a lot of legacy. It's going to be a huge undertaking. I still believe, I think blockchain could solve it, but that's another interesting.
Yeah, maybe we're getting closer to it,
yeah,
right?
Exactly.
But you kind of built something that could be seen as a nice sort of base for where they could get started.
Exactly.
Or give them ideas anyway.
It was purely a patient management system that talked to multiple offices, it was team managed, it was group managed, you had tasks, you had calendars, you have financials, everything that you need to build, it was in there. It was a beautiful system. We had 2 floors of tech that built this.
So now you're in tech.
I'm in tech.
Which you were never in before.
Except for telehealth.
Telehealth, you
started.
Sort of.
Yep.
I mean, in that you were using computers.
Yeah, I was using, yes.
But this is building a system.
Educating on it and really learning about really more. I'm not a coder. I'm not anything like that.
No.
I could have been if I took that.
No, but there's a lot of different roles to be played in a tech company.
Right.
And
workflow was big.
Yeah.
Workflow was a big piece of it in order to you can build features, but unless you know how it all works together,
that's so important.
Yeah.
Yeah, because we say the people who code can't really talk to people, and vice versa, right?
Yes.
So you do, there are people.
Yep.
Bill Gates probably is one of them.
Yeah.
Who can do both.
Exactly.
Right. Run the business and
code.
And look at the code.
Yep.
But I like the story so far, even we haven't even got to your current role yet, because it just says that you could have just been a nurse in a hospital for 40 years.
Right.
And maybe people think that that's what they're getting into when they go to school.
That's right.
To do something, and it doesn't have to be that way.
It doesn't.
You don't have to be a lifelong learner like you. You just have to be open to opportunities and adding on little pieces here and there.
Yep.
To eventually find out what it is that you want or what it is that you're good at.
Yep.
And that's what you've figured out, right?
Yes.
Do you have a summary? What is it that you're good at? I have an idea in my head, but you probably could describe it
I mean,
better.
if I had to do a really quick summary, because I think it simplifies it too much, but
that's a good point.
I like to create things.
Yeah.
I like when I was
a builder.
Yeah, when I was in the pharma thing, I like to build these models. I like to take an idea and then see it come out the other side, as a model in a waiting room. When I was educating, I like to create a training program that I could basically implement, send across the province on a webinar, and then see how that ends up in people's usage and actually ultimately impacting patients.
You're leaving a legacy.
I guess.
Never thought of it
that way.
You're leaving stuff behind.
Yes,
to improve.
Yes.
You're improving society, I guess, as it goes.
Yep.
I'll make it real big. Let's
make it big. Okay, I like that idea.
You're changing the
Yeah,
world.
for sure.
Yeah, so you're a builder. I like that description.
Yep. I'm a builder, and I think there's always been a creative part of me that's always needed to get out, and I find ways to bring it out. I'm also very, I love I always kind of make fun of myself as I'm really nerdy and I like apps and platforms and how to integrate things to make things work really efficiently.
Sure.
I like finding automation, systems, processes, all of that stuff. So basically,
you get more creativity if you automate the things that just can do whatever by themselves. Then you can focus on the creative stuff.
Exactly. It's kind of like financials, like what we're doing at Fineo is we're trying to offload the burden of the administrative burden, paperwork, calling, all of these things so that I can spend more time with my clients to get to know them.
Yeah, so what's the 30 seconds of the Fineo? I mean, you kind of just said it.
Fineo itself?
Fineo itself, and then your role there,
Yeah, so I mean, Fineo initially started about as a tech company, basically a verticalized CRM system that will help insurance advisors specifically with their day-to-day administrative role. So basically managing your clients and the database. I want to keep saying patients. I keep flipping those back and forth.
It's all so similar, right?
Exactly. And the ultimate goal really is to help advisors kind of create and maintain those relationships. Now, in addition to that, and what we've kind of become is this digital managing general agency or this digital brokerage where we're now building out a marketplace on the back end. So now not only can I manage my clients and do my day-to-day stuff in it, I can actually process business through it. So everything is seamless.
Market my services?
You can do like you mean as
if you're an advisor.
Yeah, so part of it could be marketing. We also build websites and help out with social media for advisors. So we're kind of that one place to really help the advisor elevate their game in a tech world.
Yes.
And also providing a better experience for the client so that they're no longer, their information isn't going into this hole for 6 weeks waiting to see if a policy is going to pop out at the other end.
So someone's selling insurance as an advisor, insurance and other financial products, say funds, right?
Yeah.
And they have clients, and maybe they're keeping them all in an Excel spreadsheet.
Yeah, that's common.
And then it's time for the client to renew their insurance or just to review their stuff.
Yep.
Review their funds. Are we still invested in the right place?
Yep.
And maybe they don't call them at the right time, or they don't follow up because they're busy getting new clients.
Right.
And so the first part of your system was, hey, let's make it automated for them. Give them a CRM, which is
customer relationship management.
Customer or client relationship manager. They're interchangeable, I think. And what that means is it just makes it easier for you to make sure your clients or customers are getting good service.
Exactly.
Like you're asking them questions that it slipped my mind because I have 100 clients and I'm only one person.
That's right.
So started with that, and then people were like, well, I like this and I like the way that it flows and I like what you guys are doing. Can you help me with a whole bunch of other things with my business? Because really, like, we get dropped into these entrepreneur roles or these businesses.
Absolutely.
And there are so many parts to them.
Exactly.
And we don't know what to do.
Exactly. And what we're trying to do is consolidate and also almost, in a way, reimagine the whole advisor role. Students right now coming out of like a Seneca College or Durham College are kind of learning in a legacy system of this, kind of similar to what the 59-year-olds that are retiring, what they're doing, and they're not necessarily prepared yet for a digital industry. Because, to be quite frank, a lot of the carriers, they're like trying to turn around the Queen Mary when it comes to tech. A startup has the nimbleness to be able to kind of pivot and experiment and try all these different things. And really our role right now and our job right now is really listening to the advisor and say, what do you do in your business? How do you do it? What are the gaps? What are your goals, and how can we support you in those goals? So some of the key things that we recognize were that advisors are not getting the support from their traditional brokerages and agency in terms of building their business, being an entrepreneur. You have the licensing and you know how to do a plan, but no one is going through with them how to build that business, how to create metrics, how to actually be very tactical to make sure that you're hitting your income goals, right?
Yeah, they're not. They're just saying sell our products and
be a salesperson. Push
and
product.
It's so much more than that.
No, and it is more than that. And that's,
for some people it's not, and that's unfortunate. And maybe really good salespeople will do a good job, but it doesn't really help the client very much.
Exactly. And I think part of what we want to do, sure that the tech is there to support them in their day-to-day business, but eventually what we're moving towards towards, and part of the vision is to start really integrating some of the modern, the kind of like the AIs and the machine learnings into this database now that can potentially have millions of data points that we can now analyze and say, how do we make this even better for the advisor? How do we make it better for the client so it's a little bit more intelligent, so that we can now start to look at potential customizations.
So it might look at behavior of a client, or like things that they have or have bought, and then be able to make recommendations that are very specific that maybe the advisor wouldn't think about right away, or let them use that data to drill down a little more and ask better questions.
Yep, it's pattern recognition.
We need more of this.
Yes.
Because we're not all geniuses.
No.
Like, I want to ask the right questions. I want to be like, oh, how did you learn about money? What did you know about money? Like, how do you feel? What do you want to do with it?
Exactly.
But maybe I'm not hitting the right point.
Exactly.
With a client, and we haven't got there yet, and there's still so much. They're still confused about what's going on.
It could be as simple as, hey, you have 40 clients that are small families with less than 3 children. One works at this salary, one works at this salary. Based on the patterns that we're seeing, this is probably a product that this is a recommendation of a product that you should probably be proposing to them. And then once you start to collect that, now you have like an intelligent assistant. And we've coined the term a bionic advisor, because we're not of the belief that robotics and AI is going to replace the person.
Yeah.
We're not, robo-advice has obviously really blown up, and I think there's definitely a place for that in terms of diversifying what you're doing. Mm-hmm. But in terms of actually purchasing something that's going to impact my family and my life down the road, I'm still going to pick up the phone and just double check with somebody.
Yeah.
I've had people call me and say, hey, I'm on this robo-advisor, I won't mention any right now, but I'm on this one right now, and I'm just about to click, but am I doing this right? Like, am I choosing the right thing?
Yeah.
They still want that advice.
They still need somebody to tell them, even though everything's automated in there.
That's right. So there's still, our core belief, and I kind of where Fineo came from, was the pure belief that advisors aren't going anywhere. We just need to arm them and basically outfit them with all the tools that we have at our disposal to make them better. Which
is the same for nurses.
Yeah.
Right. What they talk about with healthcare is that, actually doctors might go away, but nurses will always be around.
Yeah.
Because the soft skills.
Soft skills, yep.
So soft skills you cannot replace.
You can't replace
and the trust, right? The like, I want somebody to help. Like the hands-on, even if it's over the phone.
Exactly. Like, when you talk with a client, the computer's not going to reach out and give you a hug if you're going through a really difficult, debt situation.
That's right. And it can't really understand that. Yeah,
exactly.
That's right. It's not going to have a reaction at all.
Right.
So this is where this all ended up.
This is where it culminated. I mean, after, once I kind of, just to end the story, is that when I was at the OACCAC, I had actually became a self-taught e-learning developer. I started to try to digitize some of the training that we were doing still manually. I'm like, okay, guys, we gotta fix this. We gotta start automating, doing some kind of interactive e-learning so that we can push this. People can do it on their own time. And then an opportunity came up. My same friend said, Dar, I'm moving to a brokerage, brand new, starting from the ground, just 3 years old. I want you to come on board. The business case for it for me financially was really good. I could build a legacy for my family, a business for my family with them, and really start to build up my clientele. And when I joined them, because I had all this experience, they asked me to be on the board.
Okay.
And basically, long story short, my passion having that position was, how do we make things more efficient? We're scaling really fast here. Yeah. We're growing super fast. We're bringing on advisors very quickly. How do we ensure quality of these advisors? How do we onboard them? How we train them? So I really advocated for a learning management system to try to get everybody on, which I started to build out for them. And at the same time, I was starting to attend fintech events, and I started to open up. My network opened up. I was meeting a completely different group of people. I was now kind of immersing myself in the startup world, and I came across Fineo. It was like, we need a CRM. We don't have anything that we're using. Everyone's trialing different things, but not a consolidated solution for this brokerage. And I came across Fineo, and I trialed their platform before it became an MG. I was kind of really just testing out the tech, and because I had so much insight from before in my other job with how I felt things should work, purely all opinion. But I feel very strongly about intuitive usage and workflow, and a lot of the things, again, parallel. There's tasks.
It's funny
there's
how it all crosses
calendars
over.
and meetings.
Yeah.
There's a client database. There's a profile. There's integrations. So after I think we kind of joke that I gave probably about 10 pages of feedback. And then after some conversation, collaboration, I fell in love with the team, really loved their vision. Ali, the CEO, said, why don't you just come work for us?
That's great.
So that's how it all ended up, this whole long entire story ended up here.
No, but we need to hear it, right? Because it shows how building all of these skills really leads, and being open, and also being passionate about creating systems and learning and growth leads you to this. And if you didn't have the need to make things more efficient, and I'm saying leave legacy, which we just realized, but to build something that is going to work, right?
Exactly.
This is good.
Yeah.
Well, that's a good way to end it.
That's how it all came about after that long, drawn-out story.
No,
I apologize.
I like the story. Do not apologize. I love it. So, well, thanks for sitting with me in the park today.
Thank you. Yes, beautiful
day.
Right? Perfect day.
The rain cleared just for us?
Exactly. I think I got a second layer of a tan.
Yeah, exactly. And I got to move on downtown.
For sure. Absolutely.
But,
Thank you.
Thanks for coming. This is great. And, Fineo.
Yeah, Fineo.com.
Fineo.
It's a free FINAEO.com. Yeah, it's failure is not an entrepreneurial option.
Oh, I love that. I didn't even know it was an acronym.
I know. It's not well known, but
that's amazing.
It's a good way to remember it.
Okay.
And free CRM to any advisor who wants to try it out.
Great. That's perfect. Okay.
All right. Thanks, Bill.
If you like this episode, please subscribe to the podcast on Apple Podcasts or wherever you're listening to this podcast right now. If you're already a subscriber, thanks so much. Please let me know what you think of the show. You can email me at bo@bohumphreys.com or tag me on Twitter at bohumphreys. It would be nice to know who's out there and who's listening. Thanks so much for listening to this episode of the Personal Finance Show. Next week, my guest will be Rona Birnbaum, financial planner and personal finance expert.